Hello and welcome to the Shakespeare podcast. In this episode we're going to look at the second half of King Lear, in the beginning of Act 4 to the end of the play. In the last episode we saw that Lear made the mistake of disowning Cordelia and banishing his most faithful servant, the Duke of Kent. Turned out that Lear's two other daughters, Goneril and Regan, weren't being completely honest when they said how much they loved their father. In other news, Edmund's plan to trick his father, the Duke of Gloucester, into disowning his brother Edgar works out. Edgar ends up as a fugitive, pretending to be a mad beggar called Poor Tom. Gloucester makes the mistake of trusting Edmund, who immediately betrays his father to the Duke of Cornwall. Cornwall then tortures the old Duke of Gloucester as a traitor and gouges his eyes out. In the meantime, Lear has gone mad, and Cordelia and her husband, the King of France, have arrived with an army with the intention of taking over the country. War is looming. Lear is headed off to try and meet Cordelia. Gloucester is wandering about as a blind man, being led by an old servant, and from here, things can only go downhill. So Act 4 opens with Edgar making a speech about how brutal life can be. Enter his dad, the Duke of Gloucester, being led by an old servant. The old servant recognises Edgar as old Tom the mad beggar. It's in this scene, Act 4 Scene 1, that Gloucester delivers what many see as the main philosophical theme of the play, when he says, quote, "As flies to wanton boys, we are to the gods. They kill us for their sport." Gloucester sends the old servant away and gets poor Tom to lead him to Dover, where he intends to kill himself by throwing himself off a cliff. Act 4 Scene 2, Goneril and Edmund, and soon after the steward Oswald appear to tell us the Duke of Albany doesn't support what his wife and his sister-in-law is doing. Turns out Goneril and Edmund are not just travelling companions, they've also been doing the nasty. They've been making the beast with two backs. And the reason why Goneril is committing adultery? Well, Goneril blames her husband, the Duke of Albany. He's a wimp, he's a simp, he's a coward. He's not a real man like Edmund. After Goneril gives Edmund a token of her love, he goes off to war. Just as Oswald leaves, and guess who turns up? That's right, Goneril's husband, the one she's cheating on, the Duke of Albany. Albany says, "I love you, baby, but what you've done to your father is wrong." We in the audience, of course, know that she's done a lot more that's wrong than just that. She says, "My goodness, you're such a loser," and he says, "It's a good job you're a woman," and she says, "Oh yeah, you and whose army, you big lummox." And in the middle of having a marital, the messenger arrives. The messenger announces that the Duke of Cornwall is dead. He's died of the wounds inflicted on him by the servant as he was torturing Gloucester and plucking out his eyes. The messenger also has a letter from Regan to Goneril, who immediately thinks that now she's a widow, she'll be after her boyfriend Edmund. Albany also learns that it was Edmund who betrayed his father and left the house, quote, that their punishment might have the freer course. Goneril exits with the letter worrying about Regan and Edmund. Albany swears revenge for the treatment of Gloucester. Act 4 Scene 3, Kent and a Gentleman. The King of France has had to return to France because of urgent business. Cordelia has been informed of everything that has happened to her father, King Lear. She was much moved to tears by what has happened to her father, but that's not too bad because she looks really good when she cries, quote, "as pearls from diamonds dropped." Lear is in the town of Dover, but he's too ashamed to go and see Cordelia. In Act 4 Scene 4, meanwhile, Cordelia is sending people out to look for her father, and the doctor assures her that he can be cured, Lear that is. Enter the messenger to say that her sister's army is approaching. Cordelia is ready to meet them and restore her father to his rightful place. Act 4, Scene 5, enter Regan and Oswald. Oswald tells her that Albany is not with the army, but Goneril is, and Regan wants to see the letter. Goneril is sent to Edmund via Oswald. Oswald says that he can't show her the letter, and Regan says, "I know what's going on." And she gives Oswald a letter of her own to give to Edmund and says, "I'm a widow, he'd be better off with me." And she tells Oswald, if you find the old Duke of Gloucester, make sure that you kill him, because he's making people think that we're the bad guys. Act 4, Scene 6, Edgar and Gloucester. Edgar is supposed to be leading Gloucester up to a cliff so that he can throw himself off it. But Edgar is going to trick his father into think he's being saved by the gods. At the start of the scene, blind Gloucester is doubtful that they are even going uphill, but Edgar assures him that the land is very steep. And Gloucester also questions whether poor Tom is now speaking quite differently, but Edgar denies it. In a very strange scene, Edgar convinces his father that he's fallen off a high cliff and landed safely. It's a miracle. Before Gloucester, or the audience, has time to question this, Lear enters, often with the stage note that he is mad and covered with flowers. Gloucester, who's blind, cannot see the king, but he recognises the king's voice. The king is mad and saying things like Gloucester's bastard son treated him better than his own daughters did, which we know is untrue. And therefore, says Lear, you might as well be promiscuous. If legitimate offspring treat you worse than the product of adultery, then you might as well be promiscuous. Of course, this also refers to Goneril's adultery and Regan's plans for Edmund. In the end, Lear concludes that female sexuality ruins men physically and spiritually. There is some discussion between Lear and Gloucester on the nature of being blind, i.e. the difference between having no eyes and not being able to see. Lear reflects that rich people can get away with anything. He says, "Plate sin with gold," advises King Lear, because that way it's better than armour. He argues that anybody can be king, that if a dog is in office, people will obey him. And he also says that politicians see what they want to see with, quote, glass eyes. Politicians do as they please. The response, of course, from Edgar and Gloucester is that the king must be mad. Alack the day. Help us. The king is mad. He's saying all this kind of crazy stuff. Enter gentlemen and attendants sent by Cordelia. Lear thinks that they're going to arrest him, and he runs off, with them in hot pursuit. Edgar asks about the coming battle, which he sounds like he's going to join. He's about to take his father somewhere safe when Oswald arrives. Oswald sees Gloucester and takes out his sword to kill him, as he's been asked to do by Goneril. Oswald mistakes Edgar for a peasant who speaks in dialect, but we the audience know who he really is. They fight. Edgar kills Oswald, who whilst he's dying tells Edgar about the letters he's carrying. Edgar reads the letters in which Goneril asks Regan to kill her husband, the Duke of Albany. We hear the battle drums beating in the distance. Edgar is going to take his father to a friend's house so that he can be safe, whilst Edgar goes off to join the battle. Act 4, Scene 7, Cordelia and Lear are reunited. Cordelia shows Lear all the love and affection he didn't get from Goneril and Regan. Lear says he doesn't deserve her love because she is in heaven and, quote, I am bound on a wheel of fire. We are left in some doubt as to whether Lear has regained his reason and is just confused by his circumstances, or if he is still mad. All exit except Kent and a gentleman. Edmund is now head of the opposing army. The gentleman says that there are reports that Edgar is in Germany with the Duke of Kent, and Kent says, don't believe everything you hear. Act 5, Scene 1. Begins with Edmund and Regan and soldiers before the battle. Regan asks Edmund if he's knocking off her sister Goneril. Edmund denies it. Enter Goneril and Albany, and everyone's being nice, but we know that there's a plan to murder Albany so that Goneril can marry Edmund. Everyone leaves, and Albany is stopped by a poor beggar. Yes, it's Edgar in disguise, who gives him a letter that Edgar got from Oswald. Edmund enters and says, "You ready for the battle?" And Albany says, "We will greet the time," and leaves. Edmund tells the audience that he's got a problem. Both Goneril and Regan want him, and he's not sure if he wants either of them. But he's got a battle to fight, so he's going to sort that problem out at a later date. Act 5, Scene 2. The battle is over. Cordelia has lost and Edmund has won. Edgar is trying to get his father out of the way so that he won't be killed. Act 5, Scene 3. Edmund and soldiers have Lear and Cordelia captured as prisoners. Lear appears to have lost his mind again. Edmund sends them to prison, but immediately sends a captain after them to kill them. The captain says, "If it's man's work, I'll do it." Enter Albany, Goneril and Regan. Albany says that he wants Lear and Cordelia brought into his possession. Edmund says, "I'll get them for you later." And Albany pulls rank and says to Edmund, "I'm not asking you, I'm telling you." The women come to Edmund's defence and say that he was the hero of the battle, and Regan says that if he's about to marry me, and that would make Edmund a duke, just like you. Goneril reveals her true feelings by objecting to Edmund marrying Regan. Albany says he's arresting Edmund, both for treason and for sleeping with his wife. Albany throws down the gauntlet as a challenge, and Edmund answers it with his own gauntlet. The herald announces that anyone who thinks that Edmund is a traitor should come forward. Edgar comes forward dressed as a knight. No one can see his face. The fight is set up like an old-fashioned style single mortal combat from medieval times. Edgar wins. Edmund falls. Edmund hangs around long enough to find out that he's been killed by Edgar, and he hears Edgar's story of what has happened, and that also Goneril and Regan are dead. Goneril murders her sister and then takes her own life, just for the record. Edmund tells of his order to kill Cordelia and Lear. They rush to try and stop it, but too late. Enter King Lear with the dead body of Cordelia in his arms. In 70 lines, Shakespeare conveys all the sadness and horror of Cordelia's death. Is Lear still mad? The question doesn't seem to matter anymore. The messenger informs us that Edmund is dead, and Albany says, "That's but a trifle here." It's almost as if Lear becomes sane just as the world goes mad. Lear dies, and Kent tells us, "The wonder is that he hath endured so long." Albany asks Edgar and Kent to rule the kingdom now that Lear has gone, and Kent says he must stay faithful to his master and follow him in death. That leaves Edgar, who is the new king, who has the last line in the play. He tells us, "The oldest hath borne most, we that are young shall never see so much, nor live so long." And the play ends with a death march as the bodies of Lear and his 3 daughters are carried off stage. Thanks for listening to this, The Story of King Lear, Part 2. And we'll see you next time on the Shakespeare Podcast.